Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk to you today about a tool that is free for use in every city in the world. I want to talk to you about a project called USCORE2, but more important is the tool that we designed, which is a peer review tool that enables one city to support another in reviewing its approach to disaster risk reduction. It's a tool to help cities to implement the Sendai framework, and this was designed by cities for cities. When we started the project, there were national peer reviews available so that a country could ask another country or a team of experts to come and look at the approaches it was taking. But at the local city level, there were only self-assessments available. So we had tools like the Disaster Resilience Scorecard, which is absolutely fantastic for giving a city a baseline. It gives an idea of the strengths and the gaps that a city might have in disaster risk reduction. But it's not so helpful in generating ideas about how to move forwards and how to address those areas that can be strengthened. So 3 cities worked together. There was Viggiano from Italy, there was Amadora from Portugal, and Salford in Greater Manchester in the UK. And we wanted to build on our experience of being part of the Making Cities Resilient network and the value that cities place on city-to-city knowledge exchange. So, I'll just try and move on. Oh, gone too far now. Thank you. So, the tool we've produced is a peer review tool that aligns to the local indicators used for reporting against the Sendai framework. And it also aligns with the 10 essentials of the Making Cities Resilient campaign. It's an approach that is usable by cities at all levels of maturity in disaster risk reduction planning. And it does promote a comprehensive, all-of-society approach to disaster resilience. Crucially, it builds on the experience that we all have available to us within our cities and allows cities to share new perspectives and ideas. And it gives a route to generating actions for city-level strategies. So it's designed to support cities in delivering against Target E of the Sendai framework. So I'm going to try and go to the next slide. More success. So the peer review tool has 10 modules. Well, it has a series of modules in it. I was going to say, for those of you that know the Making Cities Resilient campaign, there are 10 essential activities, and they're reflected in 10 of the modules that we have available to us. However, we've also included an 11th module around public health, and that now has its own disaster resilience scorecard as well. This is about city experts working together. And with cities working together, one of the things that's become really important is that cities aren't sitting there waiting for things to do. They're delivering services, they're getting on with business as usual. So in conducting peer reviews, we're trying to be very careful about resources, whether it's the time that cities commit, whether it's the finance by the city who's inviting the review, because they would normally finance the travel and accommodation for those conducting the review, or whether it's the input from the city who's going to carry out the review and has to field some experts. So we've tested this model in the 3 cities, and it's become clear that the most effective way of using it is to choose a couple of modules and target them at those areas of disaster risk reduction where the city is in most need of an independent review, where it most needs ideas and support, and try and limit the peer review to a 3-day visit. The process is really straightforward. So 3 stages, probably as you'd expect. The first is preparation and planning. So it's about partnering with another city. It's about understanding your current baseline, your current position for disaster risk reduction. It's about selecting the modules, and it's about making the arrangements for a peer review visit. The second stage is the actual visit itself, when the team of city experts visit the city being looked at and undertake the review. And we suggest a whole range of activities that can take place, whether it's site visits, interviews, or maybe observing an exercise where responders test a disaster scenario. And then the third stage is reporting the findings. Now, we're clear that we're asking cities to invest time in a new approach. And for cities, it's really important that that delivers value back. So there's a whole range of benefits that we found from practical experience come out of the peer review process. But I'll just mention 3 today. So first was the ability to demonstrate your city's commitment to international frameworks, recognising shared risks and shared impacts of disasters. The second benefit was the support from city-level peers and colleagues in how to move forward in disaster risk reduction. And then perhaps thirdly, but more unexpectedly, was that in preparing to be peer reviewed, cities discovered topics and areas for further work and started to identify actions even before they'd had the peer review visit. And then being part of the peer review process helped participants within the city to understand just how much their work in this area is valued. One of the things that we did encounter in designing this model is some hesitation from some cities about the whole peer review process. And we want to stress that we do not see it as a critical analysis of one city by another, but more we see it as a collaborative process that recognises that each city is unique and that focuses on practical actions. So to turn to 2 case studies. Salford in the UK, in Greater Manchester, was reviewed by Amadora, a city in Portugal. Greater Manchester is home to 3 million people, and our key risks include floods, pandemic flu, industrial hazards. We were peer reviewed by Amadora, which has 176,000 residents, and its key risks are earthquakes, forest fires, and traffic accidents. So 2 very different cities in terms of both size and risk profile, and yet this really worked for us. So the modules we chose were infrastructure, and we did that because we'd had some infrastructure damage in some flooding in 2015. The loss of our electricity infrastructure remains a high risk on our risk register, and we're in the process of renovating some of our major water infrastructure. And we also picked recovery, and that's because of the efforts we'd made in trying to recover from our floods in 2015, and also following the Manchester Arena terrorist attack of 2017. The activities during the peer review visit included Amadora hearing presentations, they held interviews, they had dialogue with focus groups, they reviewed documentation, and they went on site visits. They met people from the private sector, the public sector, they met community representatives, all in 3 days. And they found some strengths in what we do. So they noted the investment that we put into flood mitigation and flood protection infrastructure. They noted the financial support that we've been able to get for those affected by emergencies. And they recognised our training and our exercising programme that rehearses those who will respond to help communities in disasters. And they were able to make some really good recommendations about where we should target future work. So they asked us to review our plans for high-impact, low-probability events to check those plans remain fit for purpose. They asked us to explore cross-sector innovative financing models to draw down funding for infrastructure. And despite the challenges, They asked us to look at data sharing across different infrastructure providers, noting that that's difficult for commercial and security reasons. But it will help us to identify cascading impacts, interdependencies, and single points of failure. But Amadora were also peer-reviewed, and they were peer-reviewed by Viggiano. Viggiano, a city in the Potenza region of Italy, population of just over 3,000 people, so a much smaller city. Key risks, earthquakes, forest fires, and also significant industrial risk. Amadora chose the modules of governance and institutional capacity. And this is not because they were areas where they particularly needed help, but actually because it followed years of work as a member of the Making Cities Resilient campaign, and efforts that they'd made to strengthen both areas, coupled with significant political leadership. And they asked for the peer review, both to help validate the work that they'd done to date, but also to help assess what the next steps might be. And during the peer review, Viggiano again heard presentations, interviews, and they analysed documents. They conducted site visits. But they also participated in a school evacuation drill and also observed a tabletop exercise where responders from all sorts of different agencies came together to rehearse the response to a severe flash flood. The strengths that were identified in Amadora, and I'm only mentioning a few, included the engagement and involvement of all city departments in disaster risk reduction, including their education, social welfare, their communication and media departments. It included their regime of emergency drills and also the relationships that they've built with cities across the world, sharing their experiences and learning from others in disaster risk reduction, but also across a range of other subject areas. In terms of recommendations for future work, the peer review suggested that Amadora set up a formal cross-sector platform for local stakeholders, that they extend their education and prevention campaign, which is already impressive, but it needs to reach into all communities, including the non-Portuguese speaking community. And then the final recommendation was around an urgent road safety campaign to address the extensive risk of road traffic accidents in the areas. So finally, just to turn to impacts, we've had 3 cities undertake the peer reviews, and all 3 cities are really clear that we were able to help one another and learn from one another, taking examples from each other's practices to take back into our own cities. We took away new perspectives and knowledge, whether we were the city carrying out the review or we were the city being reviewed. But we also learned that you do need to take time to prepare, to carry out the review, and to write up the report. But everybody said it was a really good investment of city resource, and it made a difference on the ground. All the documentation that we've produced is available on the website. So it's simply the www.USCORE2.eu. And we've brought a whole series of different guides. We've got a step-by-step guide, and we've got summaries of the outcomes in the 3 cities that you can just pick up from the back. So thank you very much for listening, and please get in touch if you'd like to find out about peer reviews. Thank you.